Hi, I'm Femi OK, and you are in the stream. Kazakhstan is adjusting to life under a new president after Nursultan Nazarbayev unexpectedly stood down. What lies in store for millions of young people who have never known any other leader? Send your thoughts via Twitter and YouTube for today's show. For 29 years, Nursultan Nazarbayev has been front and centre of public life in Kazakhstan. But that changed a week ago when he announced he was handing the presidency to Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, a trusted loyalist. His decision shocked Kazakhstan and Central Asia. Here's how Nazarbayev declared his resignation.
Today I appeal to you as I always did in the important moments in the history of our state, which we have built and are building together. But my appeal today is special. I have made a difficult decision to retire from responsibility of the President of the Kazakhstan Republic. I was granted the status of the first President, leader of the nation. I remain Chairman of the Security Council, to which the law grants serious power in determining interior and foreign policy. I remain Chairman of the Nur-sultan party and a member of the Constitutional Council.
One of the first major decisions by Nazarbayev's successor was to rename Kazakhstan's capital. On Saturday, Nursultan became the new name for Astana, a city that was rebuilt into one of Central Asia's biggest trade and tourism hubs under Nazarbayev's rule. But what does the surprise handover of the presidency after 3 decades mean for young people in Kazakhstan? To talk about this, we have Daniyar Kosnazarov, Editor-in-Chief of STEP. That's an independent digital media outlet. He joins us from Almaty. Also in Almaty is Aykarim Tolyanovova, a freelance journalist who has written widely on Kazakh politics. Kaligash Kabatova is a researcher and advocate on gender rights and sexual education. She joins us from Nursultan, the Kazakh capital, recently named from Astana. And from Prague, we have Toroko Durov. He is Kazakh Service Director at Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. Good to have you here, everybody. Hi. March the 19th. Hi. You're not going to forget that date in a hurry. Hello, everybody. So good to have you. That date, seared in your memory. I'm looking at a tweet here from Yerok Ott. Didn't have internet connection for the last day. The minute I got connected, my phone started buzzing. I had 628 unread messages on my WhatsApp on the resignation of the president of Kazakhstan. I was in a state of shock for a second. After all, he's been there all my life. Hashtag Nazarbayev. Toroko, what is your story of when you found out, how you found out, your reaction?
Hello. It was really a shock. The first impression and reaction was for many people in Kazakhstan and people who have been following news and events in Kazakhstan. It has definitely been a shock because, as you very rightly pointed out at the beginning of the show, that the country and the young people under 30, they have never seen another leader. And this is 3 decades when one person on the main position, and suddenly he announces that he's stepping down. It was definitely a big shock. But the shock was changed on the next day with probably mainly disappointment after the newly appointed interim president, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, initiated the renaming the name of the capital after Nazarbayev, because many people found seen in that as a big, bold sign of cult of personality.
Sure, that is some goodbye gift. Kaligash, where were you? When did you find out that your current president or your past president was about to hand over power?
Yes, I was actually on vacation traveling in Kyrgyzstan, and I was not following the news. And then my friend texted me, and everybody learned this news. And everybody kept asking me, my Kyrgyz friends, like, "How do you feel?
Yeah,
how is it? Your president stepped down." And I was like, I kind of don't feel anything right now. I better wait out and see. Only time can tell. And the next day we had another news, which was not that pleasant as the first news, I think.
Yeah. Igor, you tried to sum up that shock into an actual article that you wrote for The Independent. In Kazakhstan, the last Soviet-era president has suddenly resigned, and this is what it means for my people. Go ahead, tell us.
Yeah, so I'm in Almaty right now, and I was in Almaty when I read the news. It was maybe 1 hour before the actual announcement that the president had urgent address to the nation. So I was a bit intrigued what he has to say, because there were several addresses to the nation previously, and sometimes people were waiting for this shocking resignation, but it didn't happen. So yeah, and this time I wasn't prepared for that. When I was listening, he first started talking in Kazakh. It was 7:01 p.m. when he said that he is going to step down. And yeah, I couldn't believe my ears, to be honest. And definitely I had some weird mixture of emotions at that time. And then after a few days, I have thought it over and wrote an article about it.
Daniel, it feels like the whole nation was in some kind of trauma and getting over it together, and then no sooner did they find out that the president was going, the capital name was changing. So on March the 22nd, March the 23rd, people weren't happy. They were talking about this. Let me give you some idea of the comments that people were sharing.
Okay.
I view renaming the city very negatively because the name Astana is a brand. I think Nursultan is not right at all. We have Nursultan Street, Nursultan University, and now the capital city Nursultan. I think that is overboard.
I am against renaming Astana to Nur-Sultan because Astana is a world brand. Everyone knows Astana from Expo 2017, OSCE International Summit, and such things.
We are happy that they named the capital after the first president. This will stay in history for the next generation, to my grandchildren.
Daniel, I wonder if this might be a sign that Nursultan is still going to be around, the former president is still going to be around. There still may be some way that he's influencing current politics in Kazakhstan. What do you think?
Well, exactly. I truly agree with you in the sense that in expert community, basically everyone was discussing what would be the scenarios. And I think the last year, a new law on the Security Council has been approved. So the president moved now as the chairman of Security Council with many important kind of tools and leverages he has on foreign policy, on security, and domestic politics as well. So now he controls basically all of the key critical areas and will look as the sort of a mediator, as a transcendental figure that will basically, control all the important processes in the country.
I think it's really interesting that this is the year of youth in Kazakhstan.
Exactly.
Let me just go here. President of the Republic of Kazakhstan declared 2019 the year of youth. More than 2,000 Kazakh students and faculty members gathered at the Palace of Students for the opening of the Youth Year. How's it going so far, youth?
Well, the youth is generally not interested in politics, and I think it's a global trend. But there is kind of a Kazakhstan logic in this, in the sense that the youth had lived only under the one president, and they get used to him. So what they really think is that, well, many important issues are solved somewhere there in Astana, in the capital, and not on the local level. So my opinion is generally disregarded or ignored. So this is the attitude we have. But, with this event happening, with the resignation of the president, I think we have a mind shift now. So people now know that actually this president could leave and the other president could come. So there's definitely a new interesting ideas could pop up in their heads, how to live and how to talk about politics.
Torkel, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, as Daniel mentioned, not many things will be changed, and because he mentioned about the Security Council, powerful now body which has even constitutional power after the law was into effect last year. Also, plus to that, Nazarbayev received the title of first president almost 19 years ago, and the leader of nation 9 years ago. And 2 years ago, he was announced as Elbase, which means a head of nation or people in Kazakh language. And it was because of his historic mission. He was given the lifelong right to give initiatives on state building, as Daniel mentioned, domestic and foreign policy, and national security. What's more, Kazakh state bodies are obliged now to consider Nazarbayev's proposals. And what is very, very important, Nazarbayev himself and his family and their property and bank accounts have also been given full immunity from prosecution. In addition, he is also a chairman of the ruling party now in Kazakhstan, Nur-sultan. What is interesting that even now the interim president, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, is just a member of that party.
Kaligash, let me bring you back into the conversation. A piece that you wrote quite recently, the crisis afflicting Kazakhstan's youth, and that was a little while ago, excuse me. And you're talking about this crisis for the youth, but now we're in the year of the youth. What do you think the biggest issue is for young people?
I think that despite the fact that this is a year of youth, neither the government is ready for a politically active youth, at least, nor the youth knows how to be active, even though, of course, there are a lot of young voices now can be heard, and I hope there'll be positive changes in this, but it's just that we still have this legacy that we just decide for young people instead of listening to them and letting them say what they think and how they would like to be treated and what they would like to do.
May I add something to that?
Yeah, please do.
Well, I agree with what Karligash is saying in the sense that, well, the youth is not that active as we may want, in the sense that, unfortunately, only Almaty and Astana as the major big cities that could actually, that is the places where the young generation could practice some of the activist movements and so on. But on the other hand, we should not ignore the social media, as I have written in some of the papers. This is actually only one of the viable places without so much censorship or without so much control. So many of the young people are feeling much more comfortable themselves in expressing their ideas in social media.
If I can add something here.
Yeah, please do, go ahead.
Youth, when we talk about youth, this is actually more than even half of the population of Kazakhstan, yeah? And unemployment is one of the main problems, as we now discovering. Official statistics say, for example, the rate of unemployment is less than 5%, but in the reality it might be much higher. The recent events in Janauzen town, this is in western Kazakhstan, showed that especially in the rural places, the situation might be completely different. In the recent weeks, dozens of young people have been protesting there for several weeks in front of local administrations. They were demanding jobs. And not many media, actually no media, has been covering the event for a quite long time. And we from Radio Free Radio Liberty Kazakh service sent our reporters there to cover their protest and to show their voices, but it ended up actually with a short arrest of our journalists there by police. And they were released later, and our journalists returned back to hear those people, and we showed it definitely. And there, people were mainly, they were young people, and they were demanding jobs, and they were saying that we would be even happy to have a salary with, job with a salary of about 400 USD.
Torko, let me share this with you. This is from TJ, and TJ is picking up where you were actually discussing just a moment ago. I personally think that unemployment, high level of poverty, and also infrastructure is the major headache of the young in Kazakhstan. What does infrastructure actually mean? What are the issues there?
One of the main...
Can I just jump in?
Sure, Igor, you take that one.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Well, going back to the question about the role of youth, I think being a young person myself, I think it's very important for young people to understand what role they can play in the development of their future of their country. And right now it's been very unclear. As we can see, there are limited options to participate politically, socially, and economically. And I've seen many young people who really love their country and they want to contribute, but there are so many barriers that they give up actually, and they can't go forward and use their potential to help develop the country. And some of them leave the country, unfortunately.
So, Igor, when TJ says that unemployment, poverty and infrastructure, when he talks about infrastructure, we know roads, trains, etc. But how does that impact young people in Kazakhstan?
Infrastructure, I think this person meant that Kazakhstan is really a big country. It's the 9th biggest country in the world. And we really have some infrastructure problems in terms of very expensive domestic flights and long, you have a very long time. You have to spend a lot of time traveling inside of Kazakhstan. For example, to take the train from east to the west might take even 2 days or 3 days. So that's, I think, what this person meant by infrastructure. We need some more quicker ways to get to the places and more affordable ways to get there.
If I can add something here.
Yeah.
If I can continue, I think that person also meant accommodation for people, because it was one of the major problems for especially young specialists and middle-class people, because it is quite difficult now in Kazakhstan, especially in big cities, to get your own house or flat, apartment. Very high interest rates in mortgages. That is why even President Nazarbayev, some time ago, about 2 years ago, I think, he even introduced his own presidential program, which later was also criticized for not working well. But this is one of the major problems for youth. Definitely.
I think it's also kind of sarcastic that we're having a year of youth, and the emblem was this paper airplane, I think, was it? Or no, I think it was a paper bird, but then people started making jokes that it's actually paper airplane because young people, they don't have much opportunities in Kazakhstan and they're just leaving because they get disenchanted or disappointed in our own country.
So yes, something that we haven't touched on quite yet is how able young people, actually anybody in Kazakhstan, is able to talk about their dissent, talk about the issues, talk about the challenges, talk about the politics. So I want to introduce into this conversation Bota Jadameli. She actually now is living in exile. She was a lawyer who helped people who were being put in prison for protesting. She helped them for human rights issues. And she brings up something that we haven't talked about yet. Have a listen.
Obviously, young people can join the protest, but one needs to understand that it's not safe for their future. There is no freedom of speech or freedom of assembly in Kazakhstan, so by participating in the protest, young people can get kicked out of the universities, get arrested, and even thrown in jail. So that's that puts serious limitations on political engagement of young people in Kazakhstan.
Yes, are you comfortable with sharing those experiences in Kazakhstan? Are you able to speak freely, for instance?
Well, me being the media person working in the one of the online medias, of course, we usually consider what should we talk and how should we talk. But generally, our editorial policy is not to talk about politics, since many other outlets are talking about that. So our main mission and focus, for example, is to make people still believe that they could, invest in themselves and develop and do something, even if there are many problems in the country, so they could solve and contribute to the society and the country.
Dania,
if I can add, sorry.
Yeah, please. I just want to literally just touch on social media before we move on, if I may. Dania, this is something that you've gone deep into. #activism, youth, social media and politics in Kazakhstan. This is where the young people are able to have a voice. What are they saying?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they're quite aware of having offline activism risks, so they're quite aware they could be, sentenced or so on. So they move gradually to such platforms as YouTube, for example, to voice their concern and at least formulate their ideas and grievances and disappointments. So this is also, I think, one of the important steps and developments we have in the country.
I wanted to add something to what Bota Jardimali said about the expression of views not only among young people but overall people who somehow might criticize actions of authorities. This is truly a really dangerous becoming a dangerous kind of work in Kazakhstan. We don't go far. Just last week on Friday, several people in Almaty and Astana mainly, they were organizing small protest meetings against renaming the capital city. And at least 20 people were arrested. And our journalists from Radio Azatlık, RFRL, they were covering it. And they were a group of young people, they probably used by authorities. They were trying to preventing our journalists from covering the event and blocking our way.
Torko, I want to show that, if I may. You tweeted this video out. I'm just going to show it just for a little moment here, so you can see here the journalists trying to work. And
yes, this is our journalist.
Exactly. All right. I see that.
Yes, as you see this happen. This is the latest example of how these kind of protest meetings are taking place in Kazakhstan.
All right, Otherwise, I have to ask you this question because we're almost at the end of this show. Ijaz Ahmed is watching this. He's following on YouTube and he wanted to ask you all of this question. How can you change the name of your capital to a person's name? Was he loved so much? Who wants to take that? Kaligash, I volunteer you. You start.
Thank you. Yeah, I think people were not asked just. I don't think that if they were asked that we would do that, because Astana, yes, it's already a brand and we already invested so much time and resources into building this brand. And some people say that it's a legacy, like that woman said, right? That we want to put our first president's name into our history, but he already has a lot of legacy. So I think we didn't have to do this with the capital name.
Thank you so much. It's been so interesting having all of your thoughts here from young people from Kazakhstan. We really appreciate that. One comment here from Mohammed Tahir, who works for Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty as well. And he talks about the protests against the name change, other protests about land reform, oil workers and mothers' protests, reactions against the government's inaction on the situation in Xinjiang, and wondering how the leadership change will affect this trend. Let me remind you what that leadership change is. You can see it just behind me. This is the old guard handing over to, actually, the old guard. What next for Kazakhstan? Thanks so much for being part of this program. Thank you, guests, for being part of the show. I'll see you next time on The Stream.